and a lot of other product-related DNA that you see in some companies. Right? So let's start with the competencies, and obviously all of you are probably very senior and familiar with this space, but there's a stark contrast in terms of the competencies that you see in a typical senior program manager versus a senior product manager. While on the project management side, it's all about execution, scheduling, maintenance, risk management, stakeholder management, communication of status, managing resources. A lot of those are extremely critical aspects of any project or any product which is being created as part of a company. On the product management side, you see a lot more focus, though, on the customer insights. And these customers might not be internal. More than likely, they're external. Right? So external customer insights. And customer insights is different than customer research, by the way. Right? So you might have also heard of this role called business analyst, where the role primarily might be going after the customer, speaking with them, translating those requirements or what they hear back into implementable roadmap or implementable UML diagrams. To me, that's a start, but that's much a smaller subset of what we call customer insights, because insights is about things that the customer is not even telling you. The fundamental premise is most customers don't know what they really want, and so if they don't know what they want, it's going to be very difficult for them to articulate what they want. And even if they do articulate what they want, at the end of the day, it is our ability to distill this down and reduce it down to what market problems are really making them feel the pain, right? As opposed to the symptoms of what they're asking us to go big. And this is what I call, more detailed customer insights. But you also have to go beyond just the inbound product management, as we call, into outbound product management, right? How do you build the product? How do you conceive it? How do you validate it? How do you build a financial model that makes sense for the organization's risk appetite to be able to get it approved? And then comes the execution part, which is where project managers get very active, right? So once the project is commissioned, how do you build it right, build it with the right resources, build it with the right schedule, with the right quality, all of those. And after you build it, finally, how do you go to market? How do you position it? How do you go to market with it? How do you brand it, message it? All of those are essentially the necessary competencies that we see is extremely critical for you to kind of move into more of a techno-business role, right? And often called as the product manager, product marketing role. So I just want to kind of quickly bring this up upfront in terms of the comparison of different competencies, and there's a fair amount of overlap. The good news is, risk management, communication skills, leadership skills, conflict management skills, these are extremely critical for both roles. These are extremely, also common in the portfolio of competencies that you would see, one versus the other. But there's a lot more in product management. And if you look at a more broader, structured view of how, product management competencies are understood, they're really into 5 categories. One is what we call, hey, how do you decide which idea to go build? How do you go decide on which idea to go validate, right? So there's a lot of choosing, especially in a large company where you have lots of ideas, and especially in a startup where essentially you're bustling with new innovative things that you could do. How do you prioritize? How do you choose? So market analysis is a very, very important category skill that as a product manager, as a product leader, you really need to develop. The second one, which is extremely critical as well, is asking the fundamental question, hey, can we make money with this? Is this business model making sense? The idea makes sense. The early validation says that everybody wants this widget or this service or this new box or this new product that you have conceived. The early validation says, this is great, we need it, but can you actually make money, right? What's the long-term plan beyond the first version, the second version of the release? So this is the area of what we call the strategic planning. As you go down the wheel, the third, which is where about 70% of all product managers actually spend their time. I'm going to share some statistics with you on a research that was commissioned last year and was also released in NASSCOM, where where do people work for, which competencies are missing, even for existing product managers, existing product leaders, right? This will give you an insight for those who are long-term thinking about moving into a more broader role, beyond program management, beyond project management, right? So product planning is one of those areas where 71% of the participants in the Indian ecosystem spend their time. It's alarmingly high. A part of it's also because a lot of the product managers come from a very technology background, a very engineering-centric background, and so it's very natural for them to gravitate towards this section of the skill, which is everything about the persona definition, writing requirements, prioritizing those requirements, instituting the development processes or assisting in the development processes from a Scrum meetings or Agile, if you follow Agile in your organization, versus Waterfall. All of these are important areas. User experience design. So these are important skills and competencies as part of the product planning. And the next one is go-to-market, which is everything from product positioning. Who is this product for, and how do you communicate that value that you built? And more importantly, how do you communicate that value to the right audience at the right time, using the right channel with the right message? Right? So these things are important as you go further in the product lifecycle management, because at the end of the day, building something that does not have a clear go-to-market will certainly not be a successful venture, a successful product, a successful solution in the market. And the last one, which is also very critical, especially as you grow in mid-size or larger companies, is how do you enable sales, right? How do you enable channel? How do you enable partners? If you have to go and position the merit of your product and get the first 10 customers to buy, it's relatively a straightforward process, because you are so-called the expert, right? As a project manager, as a product leader, you know the inside out of what you build as a solution. So it's much easier for you to pitch. It's much easier for you to position and all of that, right? However, how do you do this with a third-party person, right? How does that Samsung product manager sitting in Korea define what should the retail salesperson at a local Chroma store, right? In a local electronics store, what are the 3 things that he or she has to talk about as you pitch the product? There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of design that you have to go figure things out as you go roll out these products. So this is extremely critical for you to also build the skills around thought leadership, channel, sales training, customer relationship management, not so much the support of the customer, but also managing the life cycle of the customer. How do you upsell, cross-sell? How do you position, delight? What they might have liked in your product today might be different 2 releases later. So how do you continuously understand? How do you build a lead generation plan? How do you build the right collaterals? All of these are extremely critical skills. So if you broadly look at the product leadership, you can kind of divide that up into 2 aspects. One is what we call product management, also sometimes referred as the inbound marketing. The second one is what we call product marketing, or sometimes also called the outbound product management versus the inbound product management. The engineering-centric product management or technology-centric product management versus the market-centric product management. Different terms, different words people use, but essentially this is that wheel of competencies that one has to really look for, really do a gap analysis, and try to figure out which of these do they map out to, because at the end of the day, a global product leader will be required to exercise a lot of these skills at work. Whether it's your own entrepreneurial venture or you're actually leading and managing the life cycle of a product in a larger company or a solution in a larger company. And by the way, so when we use the word product, it's broad enough in our context that it doesn't have to be just the physical products. It could be products which are offered as a service, right? A lot of cloud-based products are actually services. They're software as a service. The name itself suggests, right? SaaS. So this is equally applicable to a lot of solutions, services-led products, product-led services. All of that. This is equally relevant. In the context of what we're discussing. So, one other interesting thing about careers, and this is a question that we get asked a lot, is, careers have essentially, two aspects or dimensions. One is the hierarchical movement, the movement of moving up, the movement of feeling elated because your titles have changed. Your potential wealth generation has moved up or has increased, and so this is the typical view of a career that we all sometimes subscribe to, which is how many people do I manage, how many projects do I manage, right? As a program manager, you might have multiple projects, and that's one way of looking at career, which is what we call a hierarchical view. The second very important way of looking at career, and this is very relevant in the context of product companies especially and product leadership type of roles, is the role of what we call, is your career moving beyond just the number of people you manage to the number of people you can influence. So this is what we call the scope of influence-based career path, right? So a career where you have a lot more impact, you have a lot more responsibility, you have a lot more influence over decision makings, and they both doesn't have to tie to each other, right? Sometimes they are, but leading by authority doesn't have to be always tied or is always the same as leading by influence. And so this is very important to understand as we discuss career, as we talk about transitioning, as we talk about developing these skill sets. It's also important to understand the end goal, right? The end goal can't always be measured by kitne aadmi hai, how many people do I really manage, or how many people is in my team, or that's usually not how most product managers, by the way, are managed. And by the way, their wealth or their ability to participate in financial progress has nothing to do, in most cases, has absolutely nothing to do with the number of people they manage. It is everything to do about, are you a responsible, authoritative, accountability-driven individual who can influence the entire organization, who can influence an entire set of teams, those who don't even report to you, those who don't have a reason to even listen to you. So that's a lot more important. So just kind of keep that view in mind as you look at career in multiple dimensions, right? One is the upward mobility, the levels in the organization, as you call, which is usually characterized by more money, more number of people, number of projects. Second is the scope of influence. And the scope of influence is not just for fun. Obviously, there is a lot more financial wealth generation even in that role. But they might not be the same, right? So just keep that in mind as you kind of look at that career anchors and the competency that you build. Here's some research that was